So a lot of trades happened today. I'm recording this video now because, well, I finally had some time to record this video. So we're going to go over the big trades. I'm not going to go through all of them because I don't want this video to be 30 minutes because I still want to at least give my thoughts on these trades and, what I thought happened throughout the day. I'm going to adjust my chair for a second. The first trade, which happened at 11 a.m., was Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu to the Bulls for Otto Porter, Wendell Carter, and 2 firsts. Now, I saw a lot of people. It's a 2021 first, top 4 protected, I believe, and a 2023 unprotected first. I saw a lot of people gassing this trade up on Twitter. Nikola Vucevic is good. He's an all-star. He's probably a top 5 to 7 center. But this is like a lateral move for the Bulls because this doesn't get you it doesn't get you in the second echelon of like maybe conference finals team if you get the right draw. This is like you're going to make the playoffs. This move does solidify them as a playoff team because the East is so garbage. But you're probably going to lose in the first round still, like you would have before. And I think it's no diss to Nikola Vucevic. I just think it's also an issue with this Bulls team because Zach LaVine is. I'm a big Zach LaVine guy. Zach LaVine can't be your guy, and that's why I was curious. I'm like, why would you push for Nikola Vucevic when you have Zach LaVine, who he's good, he's not great. Like, if it was the Celtics making this move, I'm like, okay, this can help you out. You got Tatum, Brown, Vucevic. I don't know what they would have given up, but just for the Bulls, I just don't see the appeal in it. Like a starting lineup of Sato or Kobe White, I don't know which one's going to start for them. Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, Thad Young, and Nikola Vucevic. It's cool, but it's like a 5th seed team. I mean, I guess the only thing that isn't too bad is at the trade haul. They didn't give up a whole lot. Wendell Carter, I like him, but I don't think he was considered untouchable. He's a good team defender. He's not a great one-on-one defender. A lot of Bulls fans like to complain about him. I think a new change of scenery could help him out, especially if Jonathan Isaac, when he gets healthy and he's what he used to be, I think that could be a really scary front court defensively. It's a lateral move. Like you go from the 10th seed. Okay, the 10th seed, about 2.5 games out from, or 1.5 games out from 8, and you probably slide up to best case scenario 5, which means you at best win a first round matchup, and then you just get trounced by the Sixers, the Nets, or the Bucks, or whoever gets that 1 seed. So it's a lot because this is what essentially this move I think comes down to, and I guess I'll talk a bit about the fit too. You essentially are just kicking the can down the road because unless Patrick Williams or Kobe White develop into studs, in 2 years, you're going to be in the same position you were before. And you don't have your draft pick. And I can't remember if it's this class. I'm not gonna look it up because I don't feel like taking the time to look it up. I got other trades to look about. I don't know if it's this class or the 2022 class. This also impacts if it is. I believe the 2023 class is the class I hear is that the potential super draft class with high school seniors and top college recruits. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if that is the case, then it doesn't make matters much better for Chicago. I'll talk a bit about the fit because I do want to get into other trades. I will say Nikola Vucevic is a great fit with Thaddeus Young. They're both great passers. Thaddeus Young can help kind of hide Vucevic on defense. They're both good passers. Nikola Vucevic can space out the floor, so if Thaddeus Young wants to attack inside, Vucevic has that floor spacing ability. You can dump it off into the post. I'm kind of interested to see how a Zach LaVine or Kobe White and Vucevic pick and roll or pick and pop would work. But, I mean, fit-wise, Nikola Vucevic is a great fit with this team because they really don't have a great, outside shooter besides from Zach LaVine. They didn't have any at the big man spot. They thought Lauri Markkanen was going to be that, but he wasn't. For the Magic, I mean, I'm glad they finally dumped Vucevic. I thought they should have dumped Vucevic 2018, 2017. I feel like his name's been in rumors forever, but I'm glad they dumped off Vucevic. They're starting to build a young core, and I'll talk about the other trades they made. But you have Isaac, you have Markelle Fultz, who hopefully those two can stay healthy and be better. You have Wendell Carter Jr., who I think is going to be I think he'll benefit from a change of scenery. I'm trying to think who else. Cole Anthony's on this roster. It's gonna be a long rebuild. Hopefully they can land Cade Cunningham or Jalen Green. Right now I believe they have the fourth best odds, which they're the fourth worst team, which means they're tied for the best odds, which means realistic chance they can get one or two. So I actually like the move for the Magic. I think just people were like, oh, Vucevic, big all-star. But I feel like Twitter's like, oh man, the Magic got robbed. I just think this was a lateral move by the Bulls. You're essentially just kicking the can down the road, and you're just praying that Patrick Williams or Kobe White develops into a bona fide superstar, which I think it could happen with Patrick Williams. I don't think it's going to happen with Kobe White, but that's my thought on the trade. Next trade, also involving the Orlando Magic, was Evan Fournier for 2 second-round picks. Okay, so literally the trade reports that Evan Fournier was traded for 2 second-round picks. I don't know why the second-round pick years aren't being shown, or at least I don't see them within the first couple of minutes, but I'll talk about Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier doesn't solve their whole problem. Well, he solves one of their problems, which is that there's no bench scoring on their team, which, if you looked at their roster, the Boston Celtics had 0 bench players. Like, their best bench player was Robert Williams and Peyton Pritchard, which they're good for what they are, but neither of them are scorers, which Boston's always had that, like, good scoring bench guard, and when I mean good scoring bench guard, I just literally just think of Terry Rozier. But they got Evan Fournier, who, I mean, for the asking price, you're not going to get, it's rare that you'll get an Evan Fournier quality player for 2 second-round picks. He can spot up shoot, he can create his own shot off the bounce. You don't have to worry about, like, you can hide him on defense because you have Tatum and Marcus Smart, who are 2 great defenders. Jaylen Brown's a bit inconsistent, but he's still, at least built-wise, he's still a solid defender. So, I mean, it's a low-risk, high-reward move for Danny Ainge and the Celtics. It doesn't really solve their whole we don't have a big man problem, which they actually made worse. I'll talk a bit about this because it's not a huge trade, but them trading Tice for Wagner, I don't know what the hell that was about. Daniel Tice was easily their best big man, and I don't think Wagner adds, like, he's not what the Celtics need at center, but Evan Fournier is a cool scorer, good shooter. I don't think it's not going to take them over the top. Maybe it might help them with their bench woes, and they can get interesting lineups that stagger. They can stagger more of the minutes and have, like, some offensive production outside of the consistent offensive production outside the main two, but it's just another piece. That's essentially what this trade comes down to. So the next trade, Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and a first-round pick for Aaron Gordon and Gary Clark. And the pick is a 2025 protected first-round pick. Great move by the Nuggets. I think if we're talking about quality of moves and helping out their team, I think this might be the best move that was made all day. Aaron Gordon adds an element of defensive. He has a defensive element. He can play good enough perimeter D and post D. He's a great defender. He is a great complement to Jokic. He's a guy who can cut to the basket. Jokic, obviously, with his vision. Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon pick and rolls are going to be deadly. Hell, Jokic and Aaron Gordon pick and rolls are going to be scary. Ever since they got rid of Jeremy Grant, they haven't had that, like, go-to perimeter defender. And Jeremy Grant's a better defender, I think, than Aaron Gordon, but at least he adds that, like, element back. So if you look at the starting lineup, it would be Jamal Murray, Will Barton, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Jokic. That slides Millsap to the bench, which Millsap's getting a bit older. He's also on a 1-year deal, so they can essentially let him go next. I think he's on a 1-year deal. They can let him go in free agency without, like, having to worry about replacing him. So Aaron Gordon's going to be huge for that team. I always thought he was underutilized he's not underutilized. He was correct. He was wrongly used in Orlando. It should be interesting to see how he works out in Denver under Mike Malone. he has a lot of potential on this team as a defender and like as a cutter. He can also still spot and shoot. I think especially in a Western Conference that with the Lakers, and I should have talked about this in the LeBron video I made, but I was thinking with the LeBron injury, it opens up the Western Conference obviously. So a lot of these teams, like I didn't like think about, would teams try to be more aggressive and like get themselves over the hump, which two of those teams did, which is Denver and Portland. I'll talk about Portland in a bit, but Aaron Gordon's going to be huge for this Nuggets team. He's their third scorer, which if we're talking about in like terms of big threes, not like top three players, I think Jokic, Murray, and Gordon's up there. And then they obviously have the depth with like players like Michael Porter Jr., Will Barton, Paul Millsap, and Mike Malone's obviously a great head coach. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. Aaron Gordon's actually shooting 37% on 4.5 attempts. Wow. I did not know that. That changes a lot of things. Wow. So you also get Aaron Gordon, who's a really good passer. I forgot to mention that. So, and they just picked up JaVale McGee to play backup 5, who he's cool, but Denver is really trying to make a push to get themselves out of they're the 5th seed. Trying to either get themselves into home court advantage or up in the playoff standings, keep up in this arms race in the Western Conference. Great move by them. I didn't think they gave up a lot. Gary Harris really has been nosediving for the past couple of years. He had a strong 2018, I want to say. But ever since, he's like really just been struggling. Yeah, he's averaging 9.7 points, which is his lowest since his rookie year. Only shooting 32% from 3. I don't know what the hell happened to Gary Harris. I thought he was going to be such a good player for them, but that experiment clearly hasn't worked out the past couple of years. RJ Hampton, he has potential, but if you're going to acquire a guy like Aaron Gordon, you do it. And the first round pick is in like 4 years, and it's has protections on it. So great trade by the Nuggets, and I'm glad the Orlando Magic did this because. And I think this was like my point I was trying to get to with the Bulls trade or the whole Vucevic trade, which I don't want to go too in depth because I saw obviously other trades, but I just don't like when these teams, like, these teams aren't going to like be of something. Like, people could sniff the Orlando Magic ceiling from like 3 years ago. We knew their ceiling was like a 7 or 8 seed who can get like 2 playoff wins and then be bounced in the first round. They did it a couple of years late, but better late than never. You get a restart. You get a hyped prospect in Cade Cunningham. Jalen Green should also be nice if they can't get Cunningham. And you still have Jonathan Isaac, who's a stud. Wendell Carter, who I think has promise. Gary Harris is going to get a fresh new environment. I don't know how well he's going to play, but you drafted Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, and Markelle Fultz, if I didn't say them already. When they come back, they should be good. And you just get a fresh restart. You're gonna have a good. You're in a position to get one of the number 1 draft pick in the draft. So kudos to the Magic for finally realizing their limitations and capitalizing on them. Next trade is the 76ers acquiring George Hill for Tony Bradley. Terrence Ferguson's going to the Knicks. Iggy Brasdeikis, I think that's how you say his name. I think I definitely butchered that. He's going to Philly. And then Sixers are sending 2 second-round picks. The big thing in this trade is George Hill. We've been hearing reports all week about the Kyle Lowry troubles, and he didn't get traded because there was issues where he wanted $25 million a year. He wanted to re-sign when he got traded. He was an expiring contract, so teams weren't sure if he was going to re-sign. Also, you have to take into account his age. He's like 36, I think. Maybe he's 34. Hold on. He's up there in age. So there's obviously a risk to come. He's 34. So he's 34 years old. He's on an expiring contract. He wanted an extension, and certain teams couldn't pay the extension. Also, Toronto was asking for a lot for Kyle Lowry, given the circumstances. So George Hill, as an alternative, I'm fine with George Hill as an alternative to Lowry and Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball, obviously, I don't know why Lonzo Ball wasn't traded rumors. Lonzo Ball should be kept by New Orleans, but if they let him go, they're stupid. But George Hill is averaging 12 points a game, just over 3 assists. But his main calling card for the past couple of years has been his shooting. He shot 46%, league high 46% last year, and he's shooting just under 39% this year on 4 attempts. So Sixers really haven't had a good playmaker off the bench in a while. Well, really ever since the Embiid Simmons era, they've never had a good playmaker outside Ben Simmons. So you get that playmaker, you get a good sharpshooter, someone who can complement Ben and Shake's game and Joel Embiid's game. This team really needed a backup point guard who can facilitate and create. Shake Milton can kind of do that, but he's not a playmaker. He's just a shot creator. So you get a playmaker off the bench. Another low-risk, high-reward deal. I mean, you'd have to give up Tony Bradley, but the effect of Tony Bradley should only last like 2 more weeks whenever Joel Embiid's out. So I like the move, just adding more three-point shooting to this team. You get an extra playmaker, which is huge. George Hill won't start for this team. He'll play backup, and especially with Seth Curry going down, they're going to need some more offensive juice. So, great move for the 76ers. It wasn't Kyle Lowry or Lonzo Ball like I wanted, but I didn't want to give up Matisse, Maxey, and 2 first-round picks for Lowry. And the Pelicans held on to Lonzo Ball and didn't trade him. That is what I was looking for. Wow, I messed it up like 3 times. So good trade by the 76ers. Next trade, Toronto traded Norman Powell for Gary Trent and Rodney Hood. Norman Powell has been on fire recently. He's playing his best basketball this season, averaging almost 19.5 points and 3 rebounds on 44% shooting from 3 and 50% from the field. Wow. I didn't even realize it was that good. Norman Powell's been a stud. I actually had him as my 6th man of the year, but he's been starting. So, huge move for the Blazers. I was talking about this when I was talking about the Nuggets, that with the LeBron injury, because now the reports are saying they're saying another 3 to 5 weeks, which I didn't think it was that bad, but that's essentially cutting into the playoffs. So, and that's also like him gearing up. So the Western Conference is open up, as we can see. So teams like Portland, Denver really want to take advantage of that, so they can create the best opportunities. And it's kind of funny because I mentioned Orlando as a team that really hit their ceiling. And I know obviously Damian Lillard's better than Nikola Vucevic, even in like 2016 when I was like, I really thought the Portland Trailblazers were going to hit their ceiling. But shout out to, I don't know the Portland management. I'm sorry, I don't know the Blazers GM. I can't think of it right now. But shout out to Portland management for building this team. They've done a great job. Obviously, Damian Lillard's been huge. He's been on MVP tear. I didn't mention him in my LeBron video for players who can replace LeBron in the MVP race, but Damian Lillard's been huge, obviously. They got Robert Covington. They got Derek Jones Jr. Nurkic should come back. I think Friday was the timetable. But you're adding just another wing, and you're just adding another stud who can create off the bounce, which the Blazers really need that. So the endgame lineups of Dame, CJ, Norman Powell, Robert Covington, Nurkic, when they're all healthy, it's a really, really good starting 5. And I like Gary Trent is good. I like Gary Trent, but if you have the opportunity to bolster that starting lineup even more when the opportunity is wide open in the Western Conference, you take it. Norman Powell's just been sensational this season. Shout out to him in his development. Great trade for the Blazers. And it's going to be, I tweeted this out, but the Western Conference playoffs now has 6 teams if LeBron and AD come back in time for the playoffs. But 6 right now. I don't know. They should be back for the playoffs. 6 teams right now, all with a shot to make up a championship run, and 2 of them are going to be on the first round. Like, it's insanity. Like, you can make a legitimate argument that any of Portland, Denver, both LA teams, the Suns and the Jazz, you could say, I think they can make the finals. And I'll be like, yeah, I agree with you. Obviously there's teams I rank higher over the other, but they are all great teams in their own right, and the worst of those 2 teams improved to even this out. And when May comes around, playoff time, oh my God, it's going to be amazing to see what happens. And it's going to suck because there's going to be two teams that are going to, just really get eliminated too early. And it's the whole conference problem that's really been plaguing the NBA since like forever. But that's a whole nother issue and debate we can go on about. But huge trade for the Portland Trailblazers. Norman Powell has been amazing. So Norman Powell is third in three-point percentage among players who have shot over 200 threes this season. So he's shooting 43.9% on 269 attempts from behind the arc. That is insane. And Portland got him for Gary Trent and Rodney Hood, who Gary Trent's got promise. Rodney Hood, we know what he is, but it's going to be an interesting couple of months to end the year, to say the least. And I'm excited. I'll mention this trade because they're a championship contender, but Rondo got traded for Lou Will. Lou Will's been kind of doo-doo this year, kind of trash. And the Clippers have needed a playmaker since last year, and that was pretty evident. It's obvious that Lou Williams is regressing. He's 34 years old. He's 34 years old. He's not the same Lou Will from even last year, a couple of years ago. He gets to go back to Atlanta. Clippers bring in a playmaker. They also were in the whole Kyle Lowry sweepstakes, but they just didn't want to do it. I mean, Rondo's not doing that well, but I guess it's just the whole, he's proven himself to be a quality point guard. He's proven himself to be a winner, a good player in the playoffs, one of the best playmakers and passers of this past decade, maybe of all time. The whole experiment with him and Trae Young didn't work. Lou Will on the Hawks should be interesting because they can get it. They'll have another shot creator off the bench. Hopefully this one that actually works out, but I won't go too in detail with that but I just brought it up because the Clippers are in the playoff hunt and it's two semi-significant players. Okay, the last big trade of the trade deadline was Victor Oladipo for Avery Bradley and Kelly Olynyk. And I just gotta say, wow. It's not due to the fact that Victor Oladipo is an amazing player. He's good. When he's healthy, he's one of the better players in the league. I don't think he's a number one. He's not a number one. I don't even think he's a number two. But it's a good player. Gives you 20 with good shooting splits and can play defense when he's healthy. That's the problem. He's never healthy. But it just goes back to this whole James Harden trade, because when they made the trade, they were it was clear they're okay, they wanted picks, and they got 7 picks from Brooklyn. Well, they got 7 picks, and then they got the extra pick from the Milwaukee pick. But instead of keeping Karis LeVert, who is younger, you get more control of him, and he's probably the same tier of player as Victor Oladipo. You brought in Victor Oladipo, who's a veteran, didn't match your timeline, and is on expiring. And you gave him up for 2 scrubs. So, to break this down, you traded James Harden, who is one of the greatest scorers in NBA history, one of the greatest shooting guards in NBA history, maybe the greatest Rocket ever behind Hakeem Olajuwon, for 6 picks, 6 late, at least 2 of them are going to be late round picks. I probably assume 4 of them at most are going to be late round picks. Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley. Now, I'm not saying this as a bitter Sixers fan, but I am kind of questioning the Rockets. You could have had Maxey. You could have had Thibault. I don't know if Ben Simmons was in trade packages, but still. Matisse Thybulle is better than any player you got. And yes, 7 first-round picks sounds good on paper, but if most of those picks are going to be low 20s, wouldn't you want a player that's actually a player? I don't know. It's really crazy thinking about this, and this might be the Homer Sixers me fan talking. But after the Rockets lose Daryl Morey, they don't know how to make a trade. And it really sucks if you're Christian Wood and John Wall, because you were put in a situation where you were well, especially John Wall, you're this team's going to be kind of contending, kind of not. Then the whole James Harden situation happens, and then they just botched everything. And thank God they're the second worst team in the NBA, and Kate Cunningham's the thing. And I don't know how the control of their pick works, but it's just insane to me to think you got you essentially got at most you'll probably get 4 high round draft picks, medium to high draft picks. But are any of them ever going to match James Harden? I don't even think it'll be 4 high draft picks. I think it'll be like 2 at most. And you get Avery Bradley and Kelly Olynyk, who are like fringe players now. And I'll talk about his fit on the Heat, Victor Oladipo's, but it's just like, why did you bring in Victor Oladipo if you were going to trade him for nothing? 3 months later? Did you think you were going to win? Did the Christian Wood injury really put you guys into perspective of how your team actually was? Because when people thought this team was going to be a playoff team with James Harden, because James Harden's done that his entire career, but when Harden left, people were like, okay, this team's not going to be a playoff team. They're going to be they were I think sitting in near 500 for most of the year, and then Christian Wood got hurt. But ever since Christian Wood got hurt, this team's been on a downward spiral. They were they lost 18 games in a row, and they finally won. And they traded maybe the biggest piece of the James Harden trade, which shouldn't even have been Victor Oladipo. It should have been Karis LeVert. And you just flipped him for 2 fringe players. And it's when most superstars get traded, it's obvious that the team trading him isn't going to get equal return. It's just not the case, because most times it's because the superstar is disgruntled or not happy, and it lowers his trade value, and he wants to leave, and I get all that. But if you look at most of the, I'll say big trades of the past 5 years, the James Harden trade, who is the best player that has gotten traded out of anyone that's been traded in the past 5 years, maybe besides from Anthony Davis. I'll give that Anthony. I think James Harden's better than Anthony Davis, but they're basically the same. You can argue either one. I don't care. But the haul the Pelicans got for Anthony Davis is significantly better than the haul the Rockets got. And the only way this trade works out is if in 2 years James Harden leaves the Nets, which I have no clue why he would now, and those 4 picks magically become good. And it's interesting because you can tell with the whole Boston Celtics situation that first round picks don't matter. And I'm not trying to clown on the Celtics, but you see, they always were hoarding these picks and hoarding these players. And look at where they are now. They have 2 good players. They have 2 great players, but they have nothing else. And the Brooklyn Nets, who are the front runners to win the NBA Finals, had nothing. And it's just mind-boggling how the Rockets took a worse package out of spite because of the GM in power. And now the second greatest player in their franchise history, it's going to take them years to match that success. They might never match that success again, at least under this ownership. It's very plausible. Most teams don't have a 5-year window with a top 5 player in the league who's consistently in the MVP discussion, who can lead them to the conference finals. Most teams just don't have that. Some teams don't have that in their NBA history. And they just fumbled the bag. And I'm sorry that I'm going on this tangent, but my God, the Rockets really screwed up the situation. So let's talk about Victor Oladipo on the Miami Heat. I mean, his fit is pretty seamless. He is a guard who can both create his own shot and play off the ball. He's a great defender. I mean, if you want to think of a Heat culture player, which is a stupid thing to say, but a Heat culture player, Victor Oladipo kind of matches at least his play style. He's going to fit well with Jimmy Butler, Dragic, Bam Adebayo. That team defensively is going to be scary. When you pull out a lineup of Oladipo, Butler, Iguodala, Adebayo, and then you put Hero or Kendrick Nunn out there, or whatever, or even Dragic, they're starting 5. They probably have the best defensive lineup, at least talent-wise, in the NBA. And there's also reports that LaMarcus Aldridge is going to be bought out and he'll be going to Miami. I'll just mention that. LaMarcus Aldridge is going to be just another piece for them, but Victor Oladipo is going to fit seamlessly. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of problems. At all times on the court, you're going to have at least 1, probably 2 shot creators and playmakers on the court, which is scary because Dragic, Oladipo, Butler can all create for others and themselves. And then you have Tyler Hero, who hasn't been good this year, but he's shown he can at least have that ability. Same with Kendrick Nunn. And even Bam Adebayo is a great playmaker. So the Miami Heat team, I don't know how they match up well. I don't know how they're going to match up against the Brooklyn Nets. It's going to be interesting. But for a team that was really struggling early on, and I was thinking, is this team like legit? Was it just a product of the bubble? I mean, they're still only 500, but at least the composition of the team, one of the deepest teams in the NBA. I mean, they made the finals last year, so they should at least earn some respect in that regard. So it'll be interesting to see how they work. I don't know how they match. I think they might be, besides from Philadelphia, the best team that matches against Brooklyn. But I'm not entirely sure. I don't know how. I think they match up well with most of these teams. I mean, they blew the water out of Milwaukee last year, and even though they got Drew Holiday, I think Victor Oladipo can kind of cancel that out. I don't know, but the Miami Heat, the Heat are just scary. Like, you gotta respect them if you're a fan of a team in the Eastern Conference, because just of how many switch defenders they have on their team, ball creators, shot creators. They're obviously going to be good. It's going to be interesting to see if they can retain onto Victor Oladipo past the season, but I think they will, especially if they get a conference finals run, which it depends who they draw up. It depends who they face against in the playoffs, but that'll do it for this video. Wow, this is extremely long, but I wanted to just go over the trades because I didn't want to do them individually. Also, I didn't have the time to do them individually because, well, I have other stuff, but I have classes and stuff. So, if I had to pick winners and losers, I'll do that real quick actually before I sign off. Winners, if I just go with a direct winner, I'm gonna go Miami Heat because they got Victor Oladipo for nothing. Who, even though there's a chance he might leave, Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley are nothing. They also picked up Valencia, which I didn't talk about because it wasn't a huge move, and they're the front runners for LaMarcus Aldridge, so they're a winner in my eyes. And I'm gonna go the Magic. I honestly think them blowing everything up is just a success in my book. They weren't gonna go far, and they were already the second worst team with Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, and Fournier. And I'll say the Nuggets won because they picked up Aaron Gordon, who is a stud. He's a great defender. Him and Jokic's game is perfect for one another. I think he will fit in seamlessly with Mike Malone and his system down there. I think the contending teams that made trades, I think all of them ended up better. I think the only team you can argue didn't was the Clippers with Lou Williams and Rajon Rondo, but all the playoff teams that made trades today, I feel won. Or at least, they didn't lose. So, that'll do it for this video. If you stayed and watched the entire thing, shout out to you. But that'll do it for this video. I'm Hendog. This was my trade deadline thoughts. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.